Hello, everyone. So good to see you, and thank you for being patient as we were waiting to make sure that folks were able to join us. And I think we'll have more people joining as we get started, but I want to make sure that we are respectful of your time. So thank you so much for joining us for our second event of the 10th season of EDTalks. I can't believe that it's 10 seasons already. It's super exciting and really glad that you're here and a part of this with us. My name is Amanda Kunchbahari, and I'm excited to be here with you tonight. I am going to be your MC, so we're in for a great conversation and a lot of learning. And my pronouns are she and her. So tonight I'm coming to you virtually from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I also, if you also Minnesota is known as Minnesota Makoche, and this is the homeland of the Dakota people. So it's really important for us to recognize that unless we are Indigenous Dakota, we are on stolen land that was taken through an unauthorized and illegitimate treaty in 1805. We celebrate and honor the cultures and contributions and of the original inhabitants of this land, who are such incredibly vital members of our community today. And as we gather here tonight with each other, I ask that you help me keep this history of our land in mind. So I'm very excited about tonight's presentations on Pseo, which is short for post-secondary enrollment options, and how it can boost career and college readiness for high school students. Our speakers are also going to talk tonight about how Pseo can strengthen education equity, particularly if it's accessible to all students. And before we get started, I have a couple of housekeeping items. First, I want to thank our sponsors, the Bush Foundation. The Bush Foundation has been supporting this program for many, many years, and we are incredibly grateful for their longtime partnership. We have pre-recorded both talks, and that is to help us ensure that our technology runs smoothly. And I'm also excited to let you know that the panelists of the talks are actually joining us live here tonight so that we can engage in a Q&A at the end of the program. So please be sure to stick around for that. And speaking of which, if you have any questions, you can see on your screen there that there is a Q&A function. You all are able to access that, and I ask that you please submit any questions that you have throughout the evening in the Q&A, and we will make sure that we have time at the end to get to your questions. And I want to also say that our speakers are willing to stick around for a little bit after 8 o'clock. So if there are a lot of questions that we have, we're going to do our best to get to all of them. I also want to encourage you to engage with us on social media and to post about the event tonight and the wonderful speakers that we have. The hashtag that we use is EDTalks Minnesota, or EDTalks MN, apologies. And finally, tonight's event is being recorded, and it's going to be housed in our EDTalks video and audio library, which you can find on the EDTalks webpage, which is achieveminneapolis.org/EDTalks. So let's get started, and thank you again for joining us tonight. We are so grateful that you are here. So I'm really excited about our first speaker, Maria Wright, who will be talking about Pseo as a bridge from high school to college. And Maria is the director of dual enrollment at St. Cloud State University. She is also a former Pseo participant herself when she was a student at South High School. Maria is passionate about increasing post-secondary education access for students of color, students from lower socioeconomic status, and first-generation students. Maria has also worked as assistant registrar at Troy University in Alabama and in various roles at the University of Minnesota's College in the Schools Concurrent Enrollment program. She earned her MBA at Augsburg University and is currently completing a doctoral program in higher education at St. Cloud State University. Welcome, Maria. We are super excited that you're here with us tonight.
Thanks, Amanda. I'd like you all to think about a world where our youth have an opportunity to experience college while in high school. In this world, students aren't confronted with barriers to higher education. They are engaged and supported at their high school and feel a sense of belonging in their respective communities. In a couple of words, students are empowered to choose their path. a path that fits their needs and interests rather than limited to what they believe is available to them. Please keep that vision at the front of mind tonight. The state of Minnesota has a strong foundation in making college a reality for high school students. We are known to be the first state to put dual enrollment into legislation in 1985. For those of you who don't know, Minnesota high school students can earn free college credit by taking college courses through the Minnesota Pseo Act. These college courses serve as dual credit, where the classes fulfill high school graduation requirements while also working towards a post-secondary degree. Students don't have to take a high-stakes test at the end for possible college credit. They have transcripted college credit at the end of the course. So let me tell you about high school student Chris. Chris started in concurrent enrollment courses in 10th grade. Concurrent enrollment courses are college courses at the high school taught by high school instructors, partnered with college faculty. Halfway through Chris's 11th grade year, they had completed all 10 of the concurrent enrollment courses offered at the high school. Chris was ready for more, and the family signed up for a PSEO information session at the college 20 minutes away. Post-secondary enrollment options, or PSEO, allows high school students to take college courses on the college campus or online with college faculty. The family decided that Chris would enroll full-time at the college and provided Chris a car to get to the college and back in time for soccer practice every day. Chris took a couple of courses on campus and a couple online and graduated from high school with an associate's degree. Concurrent enrollment and PSEO are the two dual enrollment models I will be talking about tonight. By participating in dual enrollment, Chris was challenged with more rigorous classes, exposed to college earlier, had a heightened sense of purpose and responsibility, and saved their family the cost of 2 years of college. Students that participate in dual enrollment, like Chris, are more likely to graduate from high school, continue to enroll in college, and complete their college degrees. So how many high school students participate in dual enrollment in Minnesota? In 2018-19, over 10,000 public, non-public, and homeschool students received over 165,000 college credits through traditional PSEO programming. In the same year, almost 3 times the amount of public high school students received over 260,000 college credits through concurrent enrollment, which I shortened to CE here. At first glance, this sounds like a lot of Minnesotans are participating, right? Here are the participation rates that year, apples to apples, pulled from the Minnesota Department of Education reports. The over 10,500 students that participated in PSEO represents less than 5% of the possible students. And in concurrent enrollment, the over 32,000 public high school students represents less than 12% of the possible students. So let's take a look at those students that did participate. The green bars show the total number of high school students reported as enrolled in the respective student populations. The orange bars represent the number of reported PSEO students, and the yellow bars represent the concurrent enrollment students. The number of English learner students is so low for both programs, you may not even be able to see the bars. English learners in the state of Minnesota are defined as students using a language other than English and are assessed not to have the necessary English skills to participate fully in academic classes taught in English. Now, over 80,000 students were reported as qualifying for free or reduced lunches, and there were also over 80,000 Black, Indigenous students of color. We can see that there's a huge disparity in our state. So why is it that something that is free isn't accessed by a larger number of high school students, and especially from these student populations? The funding mechanisms of PSEO and concurrent enrollment differ and can cause friction between high schools and colleges. The intent of the Pseo Act was to make these credits free to high school students. There are no surface level costs for PSEO. Generally speaking, tuition, fees, and required textbooks are covered by the state, and colleges are directly paid a predetermined amount per PSEO credit. In 2018-19, this was $207 per credit. Now, concurrent enrollment programming is made possible by contracts between the high school and college. The state provides funding to public school districts and charters to help offset the cost, and the students never see a bill. There's a $4 million appropriation of concurrent enrollment aid that is prorated per school based on the total number of public high school students participating across the entire state. In the 2018-2019 academic year, this came out to be $52.43 per student per course. Non-public schools may offer concurrent enrollment programming, but they don't qualify for concurrent enrollment aid, and therefore the data isn't presented here. This funding model can create an us against them mentality between secondary and post-secondary institutions. Either they get the enrollments and money or we do. But looking at these dollar amounts, you'll also notice that it doesn't come close to covering the cost of traditional undergraduate tuition, even at the most affordable college. There are several reasons why colleges and high schools offer dual enrollment programming aside from just money, and I believe what it really comes down to is an investment in our youth. So we heard about Chris and their success story in dual enrollment. Chris's family was supportive of participation. They met admission criteria. Chris had a car to get to and from campuses, wasn't concerned about food, had the technology to take classes online, graduated from high school, earned an associate's degree, and remained engaged in their communities. Maybe Chris's circumstances sound similar to a high school student you know, or maybe you know a student who has a different reality. Let me tell you about Alex. Alex is a high school student living with their single parent. They hear about dual enrollment for the first time at family night during Alex's 10th grade year. Alex doesn't quite meet eligibility standards, but may be able to qualify by taking the ACT at the end of the year. Alex's high school doesn't offer any concurrent enrollment courses, so PSEO is their only dual enrollment option. The family only has one car, and Alex would have a 1-hour bus ride to get to campus. If Alex attends the college in person full-time, it would mean Alex wouldn't get school-provided breakfast or lunch. So instead, Alex takes a couple of online classes, but only has a tablet provided through the high school. The high school gives Alex a checklist of graduation requirements, and the college provides a degree map on how to earn an associate's degree. Alex has to try and fill in the blanks. So Alex just doesn't feel like they have the time to stay in high school sports or join any student groups on campus. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list of all the barriers students may face in PSEO programming, but it's enough to get a point across. PSEO is meant to be accessible and free to all students, but we can see that this isn't the case for everyone, and free isn't always free. So what about a concurrent enrollment programming? With concurrent enrollment, students remain at the high school. Some hurdles disappear, some remain the same, and we also have some new ones. First, we'll start again with family support and knowledge. In concurrent enrollment, sometimes students choose not to take the course for college credit. There are so many reasons for opting out of credit, but maybe the family doesn't understand what dual enrollment is. Maybe they opt for another choice like honors or AP, or maybe the student isn't encouraged to pursue college. Students also still have to meet eligibility standards, which can disqualify 50 to 90% of a high school class. If a student makes it past those two steps, the course opportunity still has to exist, bringing us to challenges for the high school. To offer a concurrent enrollment course in Minnesota, the high school teacher needs to have the equivalent credentials of a college faculty member. This is usually defined as a master's degree in the discipline or a master's degree plus 18 graduate credits in the discipline. So to offer a course, a high school has to hire and retain a teacher that has the credentials of a college faculty member. And then the second hurdle is to have enough students that are eligible and are interested to be financially feasible for the high school course to run. And then finally, we have the issue of a sense of belonging again. There's a philosophical question that even when the rigor and curriculum matches that of a college course, if the student is taking the course on their high school campus, can they feel like a college student? Can they really experience that socialization, role rehearsal, and independence to see themselves as a college student? We know through research that students who participate in dual enrollment have better success outcomes than their peers who don't. In a study in New York, researchers found that dual enrollment students took less time to earn a college degree. This was not only because students earned credits before starting college, these students also took an average of 1 additional credit in their first semester in comparison to their peers. They also had, on average, 0.16 higher GPAs in their first semester and were 5% more likely to re-enroll for a third semester. In Tennessee, a study found that community college students who participated in dual enrollment were 3.5 times less likely to take remediation, 2.5 times more likely to graduate in 2 years, and 1.5 times more likely to graduate in 3. You can find studies like these everywhere, supporting the positive outcomes that dual enrollment has for students continuing their post-secondary education. You'll also find that most dual enrollment programs have disparities in their participation rates. The Minnesota Pseo Act isn't accessed and leveraged to its full potential, especially for those students who could benefit the most. Specifically, we need to challenge the paradigms about how dual enrollment is funded, to foster collaboration between secondary and post-secondary institutions, rather than support only one or the other, and recognize that free doesn't mean equitable or accessible. We want to challenge these paradigms because we want students to be empowered to choose their own paths. We want them to choose the path that is best for them rather than the only one available to them. So how can you get involved? How can you become part of the solution? Hold high schools accountable for educating families about the options available and support students regardless of the path they choose. Challenge colleges to truly adopt dual enrollment students as part of their community. Challenge them to find ways to address these students' basic needs, such as food, transportation, and technology. These issues shouldn't be left just to the high schools. Talk to your legislators about addressing the way dual enrollment is funded. Challenge the state's eligibility standards because dual enrollment shouldn't only be merit-based. Bring them back to our purpose. Ask the state to better support high schools and teachers in need of graduate credits in their subject areas. And work with all of us to educate families in your community. Help us make knowledge more accessible by translating resources into multiple languages. Tell your own story and spread the word. Encourage the youth around you. Work with us to find ways to make students feel like they belong and hold each other accountable for putting the interests of our students first. My intent tonight was to share a perspective. I believe in the benefits, goodness, and foundation that dual enrollment programming can provide students, and I also acknowledge that we need to use what we have to do better. Dual enrollment has been expanding in our state for almost 40 years, but it's also a close-knit community, and I hope you join us in this space.
All right. Thank you so much, Maria. Really, really appreciate that talk and all of the information that you shared. I want to encourage folks again to please put your questions in the Q&A chat function. It's at the bottom of your screen. And I see Christy put a really great question in the chat. We'll make sure to get to that during the Q&A portion. Next up, I want to bring us to our next speakers, Asiya Browne and Zeke Jackson. And they will be talking to us about how PSEO can be a game changer for students. Both Asiya and Zeke participated in PSEO when they were in high school, and now they are leaders of a nonprofit, People for PSEO. Asiya Browne is a sophomore at the University of Minnesota, where she's studying sociology of law, criminology, and deviance, and Asian and Middle Eastern studies with a focus in Arabic. She serves on the board of People for PSEO, where she works to connect more students to PSEO through outreach and policy work. And Zeke Jackson is a junior at the University of Minnesota. He's majoring in finance and political science. He serves as the executive director of People for PSEO, working hard to inform families about PSEO, lower the barriers to PSEO enrollment, advocate for strong PSEO policies, and build a statewide PSEO community. Take it away, Asiya and Zeke. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Asiya Browne, and I'm a sophomore at the University of Minnesota, currently studying sociology of law, criminology, and justice. I'm also a part of a nonprofit called People for PSEO, and I'm the communications chair there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zeke Jackson, and I'm a junior at the University of Minnesota studying political science and finance. As the executive director of People for PSEO, I'm working to raise awareness of the PSEO program and to articulate a future in which the PSEO program is a tool for workforce development, for decreasing inequities in Minnesota, and for increasing the autonomy of students. Being a student is hard. Not only do we have to figure out what we want to do with our life, but the cost of making a wrong decision is rising every year. This is especially true for students in Minnesota, where we find ourselves at the forefront of a growing student debt crisis. As a nation, we've spent years debating how to effectively reduce the cost of college, increase post-secondary attainment rates, and bridge inequitable education gaps. But perhaps the solution is hiding right under our noses. The Post-Secondary Enrollment Options Program, the PSEO program, not only helps students like us cross one of the biggest barriers to college, the financial cost, but also provides an opportunity for personalization, creativity, and freedom at a level that simply doesn't exist for most students within most high school classrooms. As a student from rural Minnesota, PSEO dramatically expanded the number of academic opportunities that were available to me. So I learned about PSEO in 9th grade, and it was completely by accident. An older student was taking an online PSEO class, and I thought it was totally crazy that it was even possible to be in college and high school at the same time. Little did I know that PSEO was free, that I could do it in person or online at almost any college in the state, or that PSEO would come to define the rest of my teenage years. Really, PSEO is such a good deal that it almost seems too good to be true. Every year, PSEO students are saving themselves a total of nearly $60 million. So why do so few students actually make use of the PSEO program? Every year, there are more students in Minnesota who fail an AP exam, earning no college credit, than there are students who actually take a class through the PSEO program. The reality here is that, despite the benefits, there are a lot of barriers that prevent our state from using the PSEO program as a free college model. What could PSEO look like if we went all in, and what do we need to do to get there? At People for PSEO, we see a future in which PSEO is widespread not only because it's popular with students, but because it's strategically used by our state. Properly applied, PSEO could be a catalyst for a more efficient education system that saves both students and taxpayers money. There are a lot of barriers out there that prevent students from earning a post-secondary education. And we see PSEO as a critical tool to reduce risk and accelerate timelines for students and families. We see a PSEO that gives students the autonomy to personalize their education by cherry-picking courses offered across dozens of educational institutions. With PSEO, we could send tens of thousands of students across Minnesota to earn an AA degree without our society spending a single extra cent on tuition or books, without putting more youth into debt. But we don't. Why not? Making room for PSEO requires a public reimagining of the purpose of PSEO. Some of us have a weird conception of it, the idea that PSEO is only for the smart kids, when in fact our communities depend on the education of new teachers, new doctors, new mechanics, welders, construction workers, and engineers. And PSEO can serve as a direct pipeline that helps our students get a head start on a career that matters to them. If we can agree that PSEO has the potential for so much more, we can begin to have a conversation about what it takes to actually get there. Innovative and flawed, one of the biggest barriers to the expansion of the PSEO program is the law itself. We have an education funding formula that incentivizes school districts to minimize their PSEO enrollment, and we have a gag rule that prevents colleges and universities from educating students about the PSEO program. Those are just two examples that prevent some high school students from ever learning about the program. High schools also have a role to play, whether it's unfairly weighting other dual credit courses over PSEO or implementing policies that contradict state law. Colleges can be part of the solution by creating the infrastructure for PSEO communities and lifting unnecessary eligibility requirements. Overall, the PSEO ecosystem is weighed down by undue complexity and a misalignment between the priorities of our state, high schools, and colleges. These are all issues that need to be addressed and fixed in order for PSEO to undergo a sustainable expansion.
For me, I learned about PSEO through my high school that fortunately supported me and students doing PSEO, and through my older sister. As an alumni, I'm so glad I participated in it, and I have never regretted it. And now that we know the complexities of the PSEO program, how do high schoolers themselves experience it? Well, just as the program itself is complex, so is each student's experience. For me, I really appreciated the doors PSEO opened for me. There were so many more communities I could connect with and subjects to explore at the University of Minnesota. And it also had started my journey in pursuing my career goals in a way I couldn't have done within the walls of my high school. I want current and future high school students to have this opportunity as well. And a part of making that possible is by recognizing the barriers I and other former PSEO students faced during their PSEO years. Take the story of alumni Zeke, for example. For many PSEO students, they make new connections at their colleges while staying connected with the friends they already had at high school, and that was the case for him. When he wanted to attend his high school prom, however, his school initially didn't allow him to without making him pay the fee for students not from his high school. Additionally, consider the story of another former PSEO student from Fulda, Minnesota. This student wasn't even allowed to use the computer labs in her school, which was a very necessary resource. These two stories highlight a major problem. Due to a lack of communication, high schools sometimes don't think high schoolers are still students at their school once they enroll in PSEO. And as a result, PSEO students end up being punished. I was lucky enough to have a very supportive high school, but there are many more drawbacks that PSEO students face due to the program design alone. For many, including me, PSEO takes away resources such as transportation and access to food during the day. You need to get to and from the university yourself, and if there is no university nearby your house or parking is extremely expensive like it is at the U, you're on your own. Additionally, you can say goodbye to breakfast and lunch every day if you depended on the school for meals. And considering that 36.6% of all MN high school students have free or reduced meals, this barrier alone could be something that turned a large number of students away from PSEO completely. Looking a bit more at the bigger picture, it's important to see why PSEO and discussions of school choice and accessibility to PSEO are even necessary. Something most know of, especially those currently pursuing higher education and recent alumni, is the student debt crisis. It's prevalent nationwide, but is especially bad in Minnesota, with the state ranking 7th and highest student loan debts. As you can see, the median debt for just associate degree students for debt holders is $15,000, and that ranges to $37,000 for those pursuing master's degrees, and these are just the medians. Another statewide issue we are facing related to education is the achievement gap, and this can be seen in this chart. Here, you can see the large racial disparities in high school graduation rates from 2019, with there being a 12 to 25% difference in graduation rates between white students and their student of color counterparts. With all this information about educational and financial issues Minnesota faces, how does PSEO relate, what can be done, and where do we want to be? PSEO relates because it lowers debts for students in obvious ways and increases likelihood of graduation for all students. And with accessibility increased, this will translate to lessening the graduation gap further. How do we make this happen? PSEO is another tool the state has for disrupting cycles of poverty and helps lessen that graduation gap like I mentioned. For reasons like these, it's important that PSEO policy is adjusted to reflect the experience of PSEO students and allow more to participate. Luckily, I was able to be a part of this change through People for PSEO and ended up testifying in front of legislators during my time as a PSEO student. That experience really taught me a lot, and I would have never imagined doing something like that before PSEO. With work like this, we can hopefully go from the point we're at now to a PSEO program that is much more accessible to and known by students, that it can benefit the most. Knowing all this, how can we work to make the necessary changes needed?
And for me, it was joining People for PSEO. Our goal is to expand opportunities for all Minnesota students through the PSEO program. We spend our time communicating about the value of PSEO, fighting to lower barriers to enrollment, and creating a community for all PSEO students, alumni, and supporters.
Finally, what can we take away from everything we've discussed today, and what can we do? Well, firstly, there's no question that the PSEO program in Minnesota is an extremely important program and tool for high schoolers that gives a much-needed head start on post-secondary education and career exploration. This is why it's so important for it to be more accessible for as many students as possible, especially those who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. With more of this accessibility, students are able to advocate for themselves in a better way. And when these students advocate for themselves, it's the job of everyone else, including educators and policymakers, to listen. I'm hoping with the work I do with People for PSEO, it'll produce better experiences for PSEO students in Minnesota, and one day in other states as well. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you, and please reach out to People for PSEO if you want to help.
All right, thank you so much, Asiya and Zeke, for that really great presentation. I want to welcome the audience. Thank you to those who have still stayed on with us. This is the really fun part where we get to actually dive into some Q&A and have some conversation. So I want to invite our panelists to join me also if they want to turn their videos on. Awesome. And again, please send your questions either via chat or the Q&A function. Well, thank you, Asiya, Zeke, and Maria, so much for your presentations. All of them were incredibly rich, filled with really important information, and just a lot for us to consider, I think, in this room here tonight. So thank you for that. I actually want to ask a question. So all four of us actually have been PSEO students. I think I shared with you all before we got started that I did PSEO way back in the day. I won't give away when that was, but I went to Normandale, and it was actually a really incredible experience and pretty life-changing for me personally. And I just want to know, all three of you talked about this thread of belonging and maybe not feeling a sense of belonging or struggling with a sense of belonging, that can be a barrier that some students face, particularly in PSEO as they're going to college or within a dual enrollment program, maybe not feeling like they're being acknowledged for being a part of a college course. So I want to know, when you think about your experience, how did you find a sense of community or belonging, if you did? And I want to give the audience a couple of tips, especially if we have folks from colleges and universities and/or high schools here tonight. What are some concrete ways that they can actually support students to feel a sense of belonging and navigate just kind of, that experience of going from high school to college? And I'll open that up to anybody who wants to take that.
Start. So just clarification. So I was actually a concurrent enrollment student, so a type of PSEO, but I think that sense of belonging is actually why I specifically didn't want to do the PSEO programming in the go to college with college faculty way. The clear choice, the college that was closest to where I grew up would have been the University of Minnesota, and it was too big. I did end up going to the University of Minnesota for my bachelor's, but I felt like I belonged at my high school. I was NHS president, I was varsity swimmer. So that's why I chose to do concurrent enrollment. And again, acknowledging that I had the privilege of being able to choose which model I wanted to do. So my choice was concurrent enrollment. I took several courses actually through the College and the Schools program at the University of Minnesota. And for me, that was a really good choice. And because I was able to take those college credits, experience that University of Minnesota rigor. We did some campus visits, went to the college to engage with the faculty and the students there. But I just didn't feel the desire or ready, I don't know which one it was at that age, to be walking around such a large college campus now. And I think that kind of touches on the barriers, right? So had I known I could do PSEO somewhere other than such a large college, like a smaller college, 2-year school or something, it may have been a different story for me. But in my mind, the two options presented that I felt that I had were PSEO at the University of Minnesota or concurrent enrollment CIS. So that's kind of where I made my decision.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for clarifying that too. And we'll kind of get into more questions around clarifying all of the dual enrollment options. But I think that's really important for folks to hear that went into your decision-making process because that's a really real thing for students, especially in that time in their kind of educational path. So I really appreciate that. Zeke or Asiya, I want to open it up to you both as well.
Sure, I'll take this one. So I would say there's two parts to this answer. On the college side, just being a PSEO student in general, you really feel trapped in kind of a gray area between being a high school student or a college student. I'd say that's a pretty common experience for a lot of students. On the college side, you're not living on campus like a lot of the students you're taking classes with. There's kind of this thing where if people learn about PSEO, you're a PSEO student, it's either, oh, what's PSEO? Or it's, oh, you must be a genius. And that dichotomy isn't always true. And then on the high school side, it was interesting for me because enrolling in PSEO, at least for me, I kind of felt pushed away from some of my high school peers because for some of them it was almost like almost like a loyalty thing where, oh, you're doing PSEO, you're a college student, oh, you're I feel like sometimes there were feelings like oh, that our high school isn't good enough for you, sort of feelings. And so because of that, it was really important to me to have a PSEO community I could lean on, and I was able to find that at the U of M. But unfortunately, a lot of PSEO students across the state don't get that same opportunity.
Thank you, Zeke. I definitely resonate with some of the things that you said. Those were my experiences too, so I appreciate that. And then Asiya, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so my high school was a little bit different on like the way that they told students about PSEO. So a lot of the high schoolers in my class, it was a pretty small charter school. They all did PSEO, but they did it at different colleges. So a lot of them went to different community colleges like St. Paul College, Normandale, MCTC, and then I went to the University of Minnesota by myself. So a lot of the students who went to all the different community colleges kind of, became closer, and then I wasn't really connected to them. So it was also really important to find a community at the University of Minnesota. And it was also very different because it was the University of Minnesota is, primarily white, but my charter school was primarily Somali. So it was really different to be in a whole new type of environment. So I wanted to have some connection to the cultural groups, and then also PSEO students. So I was lucky enough to find both those at the U. And the PSEO student association at the U is actually pretty supported by the the PSEO office. So one of the advisors is an advisor for the group, comes to all of the meetings. So I think that's really helpful rather than students having to lead the initiative year after year. And then if students graduate and then it doesn't get passed on well. So I think having an advisor involved was really, really important. And that community helped me so much to not feel alone. And because the PSEO experience is pretty unique. You don't feel really like a high schooler, you don't feel like a college student. So having other PSEO students that you can always talk with is always a great thing.
Great, thank you. I love that tip too, that the PSEO association at the U was helpful, and just thinking about ways that other colleges or high schools can actually create that or implement something like that too. So thank you all. We got some really good questions, and keep them coming. I'm going to be getting to them too. So this one comes from Christy, and just thinking about racial breakdown of participants who are in traditional PSEO versus an earlier middle college. And Christy would like to know, was there a noticeable difference in the reduction of disparities when earlier middle college legislation passed? And anyone can take, Maria, please.
So I'm going to take a stab at this with kind of just acknowledging that I'm not very familiar with early middle college programming, and I want to ask Christy if they could clarify from what I know, early middle college programming is a way for PSEO students to take developmental coursework, but that requires a very structured, specific application between, and it's a co-application between a high school and a college to do this, and it requires that partnership to develop a very specific pathway with that developmental coursework I'm trying to see here if yes, and connected with alternative schools. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't know a lot about early middle college programming. I haven't been involved in a PSEO program that has done that application or has that pathway. Zeke, Asiya, do you know much about these?
Asiya, do you want to add on?
I mean, I would say I also haven't heard much about this program, but I would say the two programs are similar from what I've heard about both of them being ways to get credits for towards high school and college. If anything, I would say PSEO is kind of like under that umbrella. So all we really have looked at is like PSEO data, and from what we've seen, like in terms of PSEO alone, it does help like close those racial disparities, but I wouldn't know how to compare it with that other program. So I hope I could have given a better answer, but that's what I know.
No worries. I appreciate all three of you trying to answer that, and Christy does too. So thanks, Christy. And also, I will mention this at the end. We do encourage you to connect with our speakers also. So I think this just could lead to some more conversation as well. So thank you for trying at that one. Bob has a question, and this one is, how can students attending non-public schools or are homeschooled participate in PSEO? And can they? I think that's a really great question.
Yeah, they definitely can. So they would just apply to a PSEO program. So there is something called the Notice of Student Registration that is usually signed by, there's a section that says you must have this signed by your secondary institution, but that would just be your homeschool representative or head of your homeschool, usually a parent. And so they, right now, really, because of COVID, and I know some institutions used to require that homeschool students, because they don't necessarily have peers for class rank or things like that, they used to require nationally standardized test scores, but I know that there are programs that also now just accept the GPA that they have on their homeschool transcript for admission. So they definitely aren't barred from participating, but again, here's, they would have to know, and I think that's kind of where this question comes from, they would have to have that connection or know that they can do that, right? So if they aren't in some sort of list for a college, maybe trying to reach out to students or have some sort of homeschool association that they're connected to, it might be a knowledge barrier to know that they can actually participate in PSEO.
And just to just to add on to that, procedurally, we'd recommend thinking about, what kind of college, which college you actually want to do PSEO at, and then contact the admissions team there. And if you're a homeschool student, especially, they'll help you arrange for any sort of application materials that you need to submit.
Great. Zeke, if I can ask a follow-up too, what are different ways that especially, students who are being homeschooled, what are some of the outreach efforts that are happening or occurring to connect with those students?
Yeah,
so how can they find out, I guess?
Yeah, so People for PSEO, we do monthly webinars. The next one is on January 31st, and then we're doing another one at the end of February, where it's completely free. Anybody can go to our website, peopleforpseo.org, and sign up and attend those webinars. We usually have a panel of a mix of current and former PSEO students to help answer questions for students and parents. And so, we try and work with homeschool associations and other organizations that serve homeschool students to get the word out in that way.
Great, thank you. Maria, this might be a question for you, but I'd love to open it up to everybody. Can you help us understand a little more about the range of dual enrollment options that are available to high school students? And again, how do families kind of weigh their options and decide what's best for them? And I know you gave your personal example, but anything else that any of you want to offer to that?
So I would definitely recommend checking out the Minnesota Department of Education's kind of area on the Minnesota Pseo Act, because that does include data and kind of information on early middle college programming and traditional PSEO and concurrent enrollment. So as far as concurrent enrollment goes, like I mentioned before, those are contracts between the high school and the college. So you would know at your high school whether that's an option for you. So, and unfortunately, if the high school that you attend doesn't have those partnerships, you would either have to transfer high schools, or that unfortunately isn't an option for you. They might be focusing on IB or AP or honors, other pathways for students for college credit and rigorous course taking. And then, so the two, I think, big buckets are concurrent enrollment and PSEO. And then, so PSEO is any student that meets those eligibility requirements, and that can vary by program. So by college, there isn't anything keeping them from applying to those. So those are the two main buckets. There's a growing area called PSEO by contract that's almost like a mesh between the two. But again, those are contracts available at the high school with a college. So that might be another college dual enrollment option for students. I would hope that, I know there is some work on this, but reach out to the college. A lot of times, if they have both concurrent and dual enrollment or PSEO options, they might be able to show sort of a breakdown between benefits or responsibilities of each. And then if you're not sure, if a student isn't sure, if a family's not sure, reach out to a program, because they might be able to connect you to an alum of either program, or people for PSEO might be able to connect you to either student. I'm sure there are PSEO students that were also concurrent enrollment students in people for PSEO. So I feel like some of those conversations with students that have experienced it and have been able to make that choice could be really beneficial for students to hear from other students and not just college or high school administrators.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you, Maria. I want to go to a question that is directed to Asiya. There's a question in there from Bob and so this is an assumption that you attend STEP Academy. Is that correct, first and foremost?
That was my high school. That was the name of my high school.
Okay, that was the name of your high school. Yeah. So if you're okay explaining kind of how your high school encouraged post-secondary programs while you were there.
Yeah, I would say my high school was really supportive of students doing it, which is not the case for all high schools, just because of the funding formula. Sometimes there's tensions, but personally, my high school, they educated all the students about it. There was a PSEO night where there were PSEO alumni sharing their stories, and the teachers explained PSEO like in great detail on how to sign up step by step. And a lot of the parents were like Somali native speakers, so like they didn't know English, so they also had like a translator on the spot, like explaining everything. So they really did a lot to support both parents and students and familiarize everyone with PSEO, and then allowing them to make the choice if they wanted to or not. So those are the things they did. And if any schools want to support their students in this way, those are some of the ways you can do that. So
that's great. Thank you. Appreciate that. And then this is a great question too from Neri. If you live in a small town and aren't close to a college, can you still do this? And again, if you are able to talk about just some of the ways you've seen colleges or high schools accommodate this, especially in rural Minnesota or other places, that would be super helpful.
I'll take this one. So I hesitate to give it an exact number, but I saw a report that said something like I'd say almost half of the high schools in Minnesota are not within 20 miles of a post-secondary institution that offers PSEO. And so this is a reality that a lot of students across the state are facing. I would say that the best bet for someone who lives far away from a college is to consider online PSEO. Under state law, students have the right to stay at their high school within the computer lab, for example, and take their online PSEO courses in that way. So that's a big thing that I would ask people to consider. Yeah.
Right.
And I'll add on the concurrent enrollment side, check out if your high school offers concurrent enrollment or if they're willing to start a partnership, because we'll sometimes see that at some rural schools too, that they obviously aren't close enough for that in-person traditional PSEO experience, but they might offer several concurrent enrollment courses to try and help their students still get part of the, experience that dual enrollment programming.
Thank you. Thank you both. I know we've talked about a ton of the benefits of PSEO, but all three of you also mentioned some of the barriers to accessing these programs. I'm curious if you can talk about what are some of the risks of doing this, if there are any from your perspective, just so that we can give that angle as well. So feel free, Asiya, if you want to start, or Zeke as well.
Yeah, I would say the thing about PSEO is that you're taking classes that are oftentimes a bit more like academically rigorous, not saying that it's hard. Like it's definitely like, a step up from like high school classes. So if you don't do well, then it could end up hurting you. And because some of these credits count for both high school and college credits, if you don't pass the class, you won't get the high school or the college credits. So just making sure that participation in PSEO doesn't affect your high school graduation, like you being accepted to graduate and gaining all those necessary credits. But I would say, yeah, you definitely PSEO is something that you would need to take seriously. And just if you can, I mean, it's important that the students also get support for those classes, but that's definitely a risk that you're taking if you do like end up having a full PSEO course course load that, if you don't do well, then it would end up affecting both your high school graduation and you gaining those college credits. So I would say that's definitely the biggest risk, but either of you guys can also add on.
Yeah, and I'd say that the biggest way to kind of minimize the risk for yourself in that way is to start PSEO slowly. A lot of PSEO students I know started off by only taking 1 or 2 classes. And it's also important to keep in mind that along with college level courses comes access to college level support, right? So you get to go to professors' office hours, you get free tutoring oftentimes from older students who are actual, currently enrolled college students, so on and so forth. So it's really about making sure that you're using those college level resources if you're struggling as well.
Maria, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would echo what they both said. It's what we like to do with our students, prospective students, both concurrent and PSEO, is talk to them about we talk about how these programs are great for preparing students for college, but it is college, right? It's not practice college. It is real college. It becomes part of your permanent academic record. So making sure that you're not just academically prepared for these classes, but holistically as a student, are you willing to commit the time that it's going to take? It's less structured, right? So you might have lectures that you don't necessarily have to attend. There's no attendance. Are you disciplined enough in your time management skills to make sure that you're going to be successful in putting these efforts in? And a lot of time, the PSEO programming staff and concurrent enrollment programming staff are there to help connect you to those resources if you don't know about the tutoring centers and such. So it's being willing to step outside of your shell, acknowledging that you can't do everything on your own and you don't know how to access everything, to ask for help, because it could be there to definitely help you succeed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maria. And I can just say from my experience too, that discipline piece, it was definitely something to transition into because you get a lot of free time and access to managing your own schedule. So that was something that nobody taught me either. So it was the crash course learning that. So appreciate all three of you. I know we've been getting a comment too. Thank you, Bob. And just want to make sure that we're reiterating that PSEO and these programs are available for students who want to pursue vocational and technical college experiences too. So Zeke, if you want to mention anything around that, or kind of the participation you've seen in voc or technical schools as well as a PSEO track, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I just want to, there is a amazing school in Roseville, Minnesota, they're called the Finishing Trades Institute. And they actually just created a PSEO program after the last couple of years where students can go there to learn how to put up drywall and get, fulfill those high school requirements at the same time. And it's really great too. It's a really small, personalized program, and it's something that I'd really like to see implemented on a wider scale across the state to really help students go into the careers that they're most interested in, starting at a younger age right now. I think one of the biggest complaints that I heard while I was still actually at my high school is if a student wasn't interested in taking this sociology class or this US government class, they'd ask, why am I here? Why am I doing this? And I think a lot of students would excel given the opportunity to do PSEO at a technical college that were more interested in doing that, but maybe their high school doesn't have the resources for that.
Thank you. Another question, I'm going to modify it a little bit, but if you can talk about how colleges and universities are able to connect with communities who may be marginalized or not, have access to some of these programs, how they can connect with those communities to make sure that we're addressing equity issues and access issues. What are some tips for them?
I would say one way would be to connect with different schools that have these demographics that of like the type of students that they would want to go to their school, and just like advertise it in that way and inform those specific communities. I would like, obviously anyone can apply, so just making sure that they know about the PSEO program and are and then they can make their choice to apply or not. But yeah, that's a tip that I would suggest.
I would love to see on a larger scale. It's great, and I loved that Asiya's experience was, translators were available to help translate those documents into the language spoken at home. And I feel like that needs to be done on a much larger scale because we are a diverse state and the students can be very, very diverse as well. So hoping that in the future, and it's hard to say because we don't want to say, okay, the Minnesota Department of Education is responsible for this, or the college is responsible for this, or the high school is. It's collectively, can we create this pool of resources where it's translated in all of these different languages so that it's easy for, students and parents to access that information so they're better informed about what decisions to make.
Great, thank you. I'm curious if you can talk about this next question from your experience, but also from the trends that you're seeing. So I'm wondering, are you seeing that students are more inclined to attend the university or the college that they did their PSEO program at or with? And if you're comfortable speaking about your experience of how you decided where you wanted to go after high school. And Zeke, feel free to, or Asiya, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say that for the community college, I would say like generally, yeah, when students go to a post-secondary institution and then if they have the chance, so a lot of students do get their associates, so if they were at a community college, they wouldn't continue attending, but if they didn't complete enough credits for an associate and wanted to continue at that college, it would increase the likelihood just because they already feel so confident to go there since they have already been doing so. That's definitely beneficial to the high school. So yeah, I would say like students just feel comfortable. They think, I've already been doing it here, I can just continue. And yeah, and if they found a community there as well, that would also increase that likelihood. If they made friends there, they would just want to stay with them. So yeah, that's definitely a trend that after their post-secondary, if it's like at a university, they'd continue going. But that's not like most PSEO students, it's not like a 70% or something. Like they also apply to other universities and stuff.
Oh, thank you.
I know the Minnesota state system has, I think, public data available on tracking students that were dual enrollment students and how many applied and went to the institution they did their credits through, how many went through the system or the state or out of state. And I believe the Office of Higher Education maybe has that too. I'll see if I can find that and put that in the post-event resources. So it can, obviously some colleges can really incentivize students for staying too, because you don't have to transfer, you don't have to pay for that official transcript to transfer it anywhere. You're just continuing your education. The application might be easier because they already have your information. You were already a student there. They might have other incentives like scholarships if you stay, either merit-based or credit-based, or early registration days. So you might be able to register earlier than first-year students because you have so many credits. Just assuming that you understand the environment and the process a little bit more, that's a great incentive, right? If I can get in to classes and have my pick, 2 or 3 months earlier than some of these first-year students, that's another option that we'll see that, might incentivize students to stay. But I think we have another former PSEO student talking about it in here too, but sometimes I see a lot that students want that packaged AA because, or associative science, because they know they want to go out of state. So that's why they package that. So it's really easy to transfer rather than a couple courses, because that might be a little bit harder to transfer to another institution. So I think there's a lot of variety in what students want to do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maria. And I saw your comment in there too, Zeke, about anecdotally around 50% or so. And Tatum, thank you so much for sharing about your experience as well. I know that attendees are dropping off, so thank you to those who have stayed on. We really appreciate it. Two last questions actually, so this is not the last one, but how can folks help support some of the PSEO policy work that you're trying to push forward, or just reforms to the programs in general? How can they get involved?
Make noise. Definitely talk to your high school or your high schools, your administration, your superintendents, your homeschool associations, your legislators. They care about, the citizens of Minnesota, and it's our taxpayer dollars. So definitely push the things that you find are important for helping this type of programming be accessible to all Minnesota high school students.
I would definitely agree with that. I'd say the number one biggest thing you can do is to contact your legislator and say, hey, I really support the PSEO program. I think it's doing really awesome things for our state, and I want to see more students do it in the future.
Thank you. Asiya, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I would say, okay.
Definitely share your thoughts about PSEO if you support it, make it known, and then also amplify those voices who are also speaking about PSEO, and all the different reforms that you would like to see. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Devin, I see your comment in there, and Zeke, if you do have that information or have any comments you want to add, feel free to do so now, or we can send additional follow-up information in the email that's going to be sent out. So.
Yeah, Devin, I'll say that it is quite, and that's based off just conversations I've had with different PSEO admissions counselors and stuff like that, in my own personal experience.
Awesome, thank you. And then last thing, because I know, again, I want to be respectful of time. Is there anything that you three want to say or add or make sure that the audience knows before we end the conversation tonight that you didn't have a chance to say or that I didn't ask about? Come on, this is your last chance to put a pitch out there. Asiya, yes.
I would say, I think PSEO is a great program. If you have any high schoolers around you, definitely let them know about it. And if you are looking for a PSEO community, you can contact us, People for PSEO. That's our organization name. And yeah, I appreciate everyone who wants to learn more about PSEO and is helping out make the program better. And I'm so grateful that PSEO exists. And at the same time, I want to be even better for incoming PSEO students.
Thank you.
On the tag for the concurrent enrollment side too. So there is an organization, the National Alliance for Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships is the accrediting body for concurrent enrollment programs. And we do have a Minnesota chapter. So there is something called MINSEP, the Minnesota Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships chapter. And definitely community members can get involved in that. If my email will go out, I'm not on the board or anything, but if you are interested in learning more about that, you definitely send me an email about that and we can connect you.
Thank you.
I'll say that the PSEO program definitely changed my life, and for the better. So I am really excited and passionate about the work we're doing at People for PSEO, and we're looking for all the support we can get.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I just want to thank all of you as panelists, Maria, Zeke, Asiya. Thank you so, so much for being here tonight, for answering all these amazing questions that thankfully the audience sent in. I appreciate the questions that you all provided, and just for sharing your insights and thoughts and experiences. So thank you so much. And then I just want to, on behalf of the EDTalks team, express our deepest gratitude to every single person that joined us tonight and for engaging with us in this virtual format. We so appreciate you, and this could not happen without you. We do have a full season of amazing EDTalks ahead, so please keep your eyes peeled for more information regarding the next event, and that is scheduled to happen on Monday, March 28th. So look out for more information, announcements, and emails and information on the website. And then tonight's video is going to be shared, the recording, as well as the resources that some of our presenters talked about. And I believe their contact information if they are okay with that. So that email will go out next week. So keep your eyes open for that. And a survey is also going to go out. We really want to get your feedback, hear how this event went and how we can improve it next time. So we really would appreciate you taking a few minutes to fill that out for us. And again, I want to thank Bush Foundation for funding these events. They make this all possible, so we are incredibly grateful for them. And we encourage you all to connect with our event partners, Achieve Minneapolis, which I've had the pleasure of working with for a while now, and they are fantastic, and Citizens League, which is where I actually came from, so I am definitely a huge fan of them. But please check out their websites, see the work that they're doing in the community, the impact that they're making, and all of the great things that they have to offer and ways that you can engage with them. Their websites will be on the screen. They're right there. And just thank you again. I hope you all have a great night. And we hope to connect with you offline, and stay well, everyone. Bye.